Recording in progress.
Gala Rinpoche, we can't hear you. Gala Rinpoche, can we have Genla speak a few sentences, please?
Hello, Dr. Tele. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, buti nyam do lep tes. Saya sak. Ada. Buti auto. Oh ya. Oh, Dr. Tele. Good to go.
ngā yapo kogidu.
Oh ya ya. Oh ya.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Delay. And good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Welcome
yeah.
to online to this last class in our series of teachings on the Rice Seedling Sutra, hopefully to be continued in the future. We'll begin with some preliminary prayers. The link is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, no other world, supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With your body's form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma in whatever
Ala Kaniyadaya.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
야, 다 딕송겐나.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah. Ore ta chunju, desa chimbu shawale chunju le. Dinde tewanye chune, ake kebu mache na, dile luba sheme den, dile momba sheme. Dinde tewanye chune, tewa jedan jorba chusame milu nye bar chune sungudwa. Ne taage tari kugab sangbu dili ya, tewa la kum, kebu pa, tewa chima penche chi, tusu tanda tuktuwa chiche ure sungudwa. Dinde tewanye chune, taage kebu mache na. Dile luba sheme den, dile momba sheme. Rangi rang luba res. Rang kukba shibuchi mongba kukba resi gyore res ngora. Karesina ko tanda ngazu yawa jedan jorba chusang milu toba di kabliya. Nikyawa chima penje tanda karu tumne tuwe yorwa. Tusu matu mato. Tenchun deni nyeba shindo ka kibu tunru toba chuba la sigeba. Yazan ko kibu tanda sen ditsa mayimba kiwa chima tanda. Mondo lami koba, nele tarba da tamje kimbe koba, karitum na ruye tabshi rang chetuya yore sungudwa. O tan dinde kugabde tangzin chenerwa, tatu sungne namju yawa yeda tendula soba kiawa ngemba kiawa milu top na ya, milu mabu tobi na ya, tangye temba tangje wa tendre kumbudwa. O tatarin de shindo kugab sangbu toba de. Abuchi pechu cheche, sendi chigbu tundala soba mayiba. Yawa chimba penche tunda chubu de sungudwa. Ye mache na, ne dile mongba, kukba, rangi rang luba. Ni mongba, tinde la gyurkiri sungudwa.
So here, as the great Bodhisattva Shantideva has said, at this time where we have this life of freedoms and endowments, of leisures and opportunities, we have the ability then to achieve whatever kind of goal for the future that we might want. So at this time where we have this kind of life, if we fail to make use of this, if we fail to use it for something good, what could be more deceptive than this, or what could be sort of stupider than this? So at this time, we have this kind of life of freedoms and opportunities, meaning that we have the ability to work not just for the affairs of this life, but could achieve something for beyond this life, meaning a rebirth as a human or a god, or strive for liberation. We have the ability to make effort at virtue and avoid non-virtue. So if instead of using our life for that purpose, if we just sort of let it go to waste, what could be a greater deception to ourselves, or sort of what could be stupider than this? So again, there's another verse from Shantideva where he says that this life of leisure and opportunity is extremely difficult to find. If I fail to turn this to my profit, to use it in this kind of beneficial way, then how could such an opportunity be mine again? How will I get such a chance? So again, this kind of life that we have right now, we have the ability, if we make effort, to achieve a rebirth as a human or a god, or even to strive for liberation and the state of omniscience. And so out of sort of grasping at a self, we have this kind of delusion. We usually follow after that. So even if we have, say, achieving a human life is extremely rare, but to have this kind of human life where we have also met with the teachings of the Buddha, that is even more rare. And so we shouldn't let this sort of pass away or go to waste, but instead we should not just think about this life and sustaining ourselves, but go beyond that. If we don't make this profitable, we don't use this kind of life for those opportunities, then how will we have such a chance again in the future?
Oh yeah. I don't know. Chuba let Hash Tingy Sama Zombarwa. And then Nanjay, Chutan Java. Oh, the Rick cook up some with the lesson Gora. And you million day. Oh yeah, Hajam Gombo yes and Dolly Songudoa. Nanjay and Dirk up so. And now Songudan, Zambulian day. Tai Kamzu Chamboli Jurs. Zambuli Yonzo de Tai Kamzu Chambuchel Jur. And it should love the Casacal, should love the pa. Yamse Kansula Lava Jam the Chula Mabuyora. Chula Mabucham. And a Pechaviorda. Zambuli Yonzo Kasu Chambuchit, should love the Paka. You only I Kamzu Tilia, Rube. But so thing like dead and get. And rename Mangsha the Tai Kamzu in Soda. In the court, the world there. Lord Jatolia. And the Sonalia. Got all the Chiviade. Ya, you call it. Or teacher, take the patient actually. Singing and that, sing chamber. It did a Igayavashe. Did a Igayavashe. Yashinish, Lebleche, in the Shingchi. Circle pa, lap your cascal kigivana. That rebate Lojani and got all the Chibek up the da. Yashin dig. You can use the Goya, Suba, Sigrives and a Siba Samchi. Remado Tayon Pekabura de Ora. Oh, Etabushin de Junga Teleja. Yawa get a Jorbachu Sam Milu de Pe, Chindo, Niakawa in Songodoa. Ah,
Mhm. So right now we have all of the kind of necessary conditions to be able to accomplish the Dharma, all of those sorts of conducive conditions. But having this kind of situation is extremely rare. As the Buddha himself has described in a sutra, he gives this example. And if we can sort of imagine this example of this entire world being a vast ocean, covered with an ocean, and this ocean is perturbed by all kinds of waves. The waves are moving around. And that ocean, at the bottom of the ocean, lives this turtle. And the turtle, he only comes to the surface every 100 years. And so we can imagine there's that turtle underneath the surface, and on the surface of this vast ocean is like a large piece of wood with a hole in the center. And so if you were to ask the question, well, is it possible for this turtle, when he comes up every 100 years, to put his head through that hole in that piece of wood that's going along on this vast ocean stirred about by waves? We would have to say, well, yes, that's possible, but it's extremely rare. It's almost so rare as to be impossible. And so thinking about it in this way, to have the kind of life that we do right now, where we have encountered the Dharma and so forth, is like this example, extremely rare to have come across all of these conducive conditions.
Oh yeah, do that. If you don't do Toba Jubalas, Jide Chima Penji, and that's also true. We are your race on Gudoa. When I keep chewing it and that Ruberishin, Kiwachima, Lada Mekova. Yes, all the Majiva, Lada Mekova, Church Rubet and Cabar Church. Over chairs and the Rangala by your Songora. Oh, then yes, only Kichi Jukare, Lada Miliki, Jukaresana. Shala Seven make you a chu, Lunga used to go and make you a chutipa. You don't so get Kiwachu Chin you troop. You are Toma Mevana Sasha, but the Batuzel and Yosim Shakbache. Oh, today, Niri, 메시나 삼루당 거라. 뭐 켈링게든데 지시 소이바도 제제 어제기 메시를 켈링이 와래. 이나 니리나람 삼루시 따투나 야와라. 메시치나 소소 드리니메 콜리아. 능아 예수 주권의 시안을 사와카리 조성을 마셨다. 와 펜바르 가르치에서 최대 tembu 가르치에서 삼루레 따지기나 이 개와의 숙천부여대 교황아마사베 미교와 연애 대수파탄다 미마도 베체네 사다 밀리케 마동에서 교와의 까토고도 어디 리자코 니리니리 메시나 삼루당고도 이 두에도 왕하죠 아딩가 좀 마도 두에 예버와 니리니리 메시나 삼루당한테잖아 고고나 고도 앞에 두에시로 전에 대체리아 기분 된게 하루토베 주르치네 어디 다음에 동반이다 저자게 여부삼로 따토 나다리 역시로와 이메나 공항아 삼상아 라도치 조지여와 삼바데 tinden가지 요마레 삼사사 마달레 소스 짱짱 삼로다 근데 제 삼음하고 소스 던달리 셴다 가리네 제퍼바 어제 야보레메도 삼사 tin데 삼리스 코르다 야보레도르도 근데 작다 오르체다 현장 숙청부지야 아주다 건조세 딱쇼도 현장 미리다 줄로다 아직까지 촉심업지에도 그래서 가재이나 초르초르다나 하루아토베 교사가 여삼나 하루아토베 교르도도 와 거지 교된 염어레 되어라 이마 초르다기 와라 그래 다들 남산 타르토마토나야 하게 이 타바토베 교사야도 와 어디나 시티 라치부 멤버 심제 탐지 대원들 통해 면도바 라다 치바레 삼 아께 군세 연대 군대 현대 판매 선배 심제 강가 트루버 투자 트루버 지치긴 삼 군세 연대 군대지 기부 단다 타르바토 얘기 좋았던 얘기 이빈데 강통배게 랑도르기 내 상마신게게 강사진 교라 저기 삼 어떤데 삼르다나니 대바심베 단계지 고바토지기 졸래안도 도그라도 어떤데 삼르단 것도 와 그래서다 근데 삼르다니 기부섬게 남제른 벌 삼르롭스 땅 네 저도 산제지 고바 근데 저토바 저기 삼 어추세로나 스쿨은 남준에티 삼르단 것도 개와 근데 삼르다나 안돼 지기나다 차차기나다 기부섬게 남제른 버터 또 롭스 삼르다 근데 tellejuguine che va lepchen passavi ora. Oya teaching December shoes.
So here, as this verse says, that with this kind of life of freedoms and opportunities, we can accomplish the aims of beings. We have the capacity with this life that we have. So what will come in the future? Again, Dharma is about what is beyond just this life. And so here we have the ability to work for, say, achieving a good rebirth in the future, avoiding a rebirth in the lower realms. And this is based upon our abandoning any kind of harmful actions of body, speech, and mind, doing as much as we can to benefit others, as many positive actions, as well as working to confess and purify those kinds of negativities that we have accumulated in the past. And so here, this is important that we don't just sort of, we may have, say, taken a vow not to kill, but thinking about these things on a daily basis, looking at what have we done in terms of virtue and non-virtue today. We can increase our virtuous activities by really paying attention to what we are doing and reduce those kinds of non-virtues. But this means evaluating our actions and watching our mind on a daily basis. This is something that we are absolutely capable of doing, and we can improve our minds. This isn't beyond our capacity. And if we think even moving beyond just the contemplation for the being of small capacity to that of recognizing the kind of defects of this strong self-grasping and the kind of attachment to our side and aversion, animosity toward others. We have the sense that there's this autonomous kind of I. And when we begin to evaluate and examine that, we can see that these kinds of afflictions of attachment and animosity, thinking of us and them, is something that is the source of our problems. And so we're not able to eliminate those instantly. We can't immediately achieve liberation, but we can create the kinds of conditions to reduce those, to be able to eliminate them. And over time, we can create the kind of causes that lead to liberation. But thinking beyond just our own situation, if we look at all of these other sentient beings who have acted like our mothers and fathers in this life, we can recognize that they are all just like us in not wanting to suffer and wanting to have happiness. And thinking that if we could achieve a state in which we have eliminated all faults and are endowed with all qualities, in which we are able to fulfill the aims of beings, we know all of the points of what are to be adopted and what is to be abandoned. Then we would really be able to lead those beings to their happiness, to their liberation. And so with that kind of thought, if we take the time to think about these various levels of motivation and really generate the kind of attitude, thinking that I want these virtues to go toward that goal of gaining the state of omniscience for the benefit of all sentient beings, that's really how we create the causes for that result. And so whatever virtuous activity we are doing, whether we're saying a prayer or doing prostrations or studying the various topics of the Lam Rim, it's very important to contemplate our intention, our motivation ahead of time. And so I would ask that you please set a good motivation for then listening to these teachings.
Oh yeah, that is. I'm going to do the day my say the lesson. Oh yeah. And the engine driver Joa Ma Suda. Engine driver Joaris, engine driver Joaris, Solution Bedo Capsity. Also, engine driver Joa Tonga de Chutongo se. Chutonga de Sanje Tongo se. Tendi de Kitchen Bushibiche Songodoa. Oh, Tendi. Tendi Ma said the Chiruba to the net and Ma de Rio Mare. Jiden Chebabo Tabat and Dish so your resa. Zambuling Damenda, Nishi Damenda, Watung, the Kyoan Damenda to the Kanga, Akbaran Jungi, Chebabo Chick, so your race, some get wa, it engine the version of the Gio Mare. And it Taganashi, Jamba to the Chiso, says she shot, which shot it up by Yense. Eletan Kanga to the Saris, it engine the version of the Gio Mare. I said, you talk about it, you want to cry. Your mother, you shan't take on my reserve. Oh, today. Young Bimba is in all to your mother, Koran Tawasha, give your rest. Samari to the song, guess to your mother. Someone number to the song, guess to your mother. Koran Tawasha, the young goddess, you get your mother say. There's some thought to go take the devils on your mother. Engineers doing Yelengi you. A legend against Tunini Kubiora. Or all the Tiba to Chilamna. There's only attention to your Mares.
So here, picking up in the text, we were on 59 in the English, talking about the proponents of dependent arising. So here, whereas Buddhists, proponents of Buddhist tenets assert that all composite things are dependent arising, as we see here in the Rice Seedling Sutra, he says then, monks, he who sees dependent arising sees the Dharma. He who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha, and so forth. And so here, dependent arising is an extremely important tenet, something that is proposed by the Buddhists. And those who then are non-Buddhists, who assert some kind of a creator who is permanent and self-arisen. This is contradictory to an idea of dependent arising. So those that would assert some kind of creator who is self self-arisen and permanent, or those like the Samkhyas who assert a primary substance that is the basis of all phenomena, or there are some who assert like a permanent entity of time that is the cause of all things. They don't assert other types of causes. Or you have, for example, the Charvakas who are saying that things are produced causelessly, like peas are round, nobody made them round, they're just sort of spuriously that way. Or thorns, nobody made them sharp, they just are that way. So things arise causelessly according to them. So here, as opposed to that, proponents of dependent arising, including Buddhist proponents of dependent arising, would say that you need in particular two causes, a substantial cause as well as coordinating conditions in order to bring about an effect. And this is in contrast to any of those other views.
Oh yeah. Oh, do got soda. Engine driver Joas, Mobile, Judan Keleton, and Kebatajane, Judan Kens to Judity, Yelengi Judilisura, Yelengi Justin Koran Reag to Shora, Ngojuro, and the Shinglish than a subbing part of it in Yelenkuda. A language against Sada Chuda, Juda, or to Luda, to Kangate, Yene party, Nugungo Juel, Robert and get a language against Gra. Judan Kensigua. Judan Kese. Yelenda Lenji Chiganidua. The Tini de Judipan Juroche. Yenede Lenji Chigan to Robert Chidoni, Teleco, and Juachin and Juarchin and Drebudia to Biora. Engine driver Juasete. Yelenda Lenji Chigan Latenje, Edan Dren, Tiwang Sukiora. But the Koran Suki Mare, Rangwin to be Kawari Mare. Penangazute King to Hakudoa, to Baruchi Loma Kangapa, Meva Chagdoa, or Rangwin Loma Meva Kachavi Mara, for Treda Chichi Madrid, Tinicoti, Kanga, Loma Zapa Meva Chagiora. Atsuchi Motindicha Suchi Kyogudoa, Rangwin Tanga Kiran, some Suki Kayomara. Okeji Jutra, Chuda, Tezukanga, 20 songs on the Kotsuke Ogodoa. Rawine Keke Medua, Rawanchin, Koking, Zuzu Sake Omare. Judan Genji, Chisade Koti, Manjuranju, Rangshin, Luburduko, Gurgura, Chuyongura, Shanda Suchuyongura. Judan King Suchumara, Mato, Kora Rangshin, Sutungiomara. Razum Mikashin, Nagadoa. Naso Sidu, Susu Rawanchin, Nagiomara. Rawajan Nagis Suke Yomara, Sogunag Chasha to the Chimandri, Angachi Chasha Mambuora, the Chimandri do it, Tebu Medu, Soa, Tebu Medu, and Nagasigora, Anganagadu Segra. A Trasuna Mandra, say, Calicali Tirache, Shanda to the Judan King to the Sumbuche, Jujin to the Dada Resona, a Tanga Trason say, Tebu do Segdoa. Jujin tended Sogwala Tene. Now at a talk about the Suguto Amatochi, Songa Nagachi, Rawagutuna, Rawagi, and Kasatra, Dogachi Mendoa. Robs Sambrutana, engine repertoire, Rawina to the Tongba rest, and we will Kanga Tagare. Razonganga, some the Sosu Yabusambuchite, some Gudua. She long done log this Chalamambuyora, Zukanga Sadachi to rent the Zukanga Legachora. Utangudo, Chutungudo, Kalasagudo. The words legacy, the Zukangaji Sodunia, the Tor which they did it, and send the years, some giver, somebody there. Yangarazungara, Rawagachi, send the years, some Rawake Homara. Yangazu saw to do Yabuyungdo. Loya Lerwa. Namjuni Sham Jobandu, relieved out in Zadin Jobaja and Zagira. Then now I can do the Paruja and Redro Chigdoa, or Tangati, Yamanashi Remeto has some Kosobuda, Tezulet, Drene, Chico by the Hakodoa, or Yongudoa. Such a ranch and the Chichi some taken me. Utaya, the Dwajin Chimadina, some which take me doa. But the tangent ever join a round to Trubayoma, Rese. And day in a Tongbares, around a Truba Tongba says to Vara. Yeah, Tamanda Satiji Lapsera.
So here, if something is dependently originated, that means that it arises due to causes and conditions. Here, specifically, the substantial cause and the kind of coordinating conditions come together to bring about a result. So if we have like a tree, the substantial cause is the seed, the thing that has the potential to bring about that effect. But it needs also those kinds of coordinating conditions, water and fertilizer and ground and heat and so forth. And it is then through the transformation of that substantial cause that you have the establishment of the result. So it's not as though these things come about sort of self-arisen, not from their own side, somehow like autonomously. Like if we look at a tree again, when the leaves of a tree fall, it's not as though the tree like decided to drop its leaves or just does that from its own side. It's dependent upon all kinds of other conditions, it getting colder and the weather and the kind of things that are available to that tree. And so too, when it grows new leaves. It's not as though the tree sort of thinks from its own side without depending on anything else to produce leaves, but rather there are many causes and conditions necessary in order for that tree to then grow new leaves. And so here, these things are sort of shaped and created through the various causes and conditions. There's not that kind of autonomous existence from their own side, even though we might have the sense that there is. Like people get sick. None of us wants to get sick on our own. We're not like autonomously from our own side getting sick, but rather it is due to the various elements, the things within our body being out of balance. There's some kind of conditions that lead to that illness. And then so too, when it comes to healing, recovering from that illness, it's not as though there's the autonomy to decide, oh, I'm going to get better, but rather upon taking the proper medicine and doing the proper kind of care, one then becomes well. We have the conditions to have our sort of health restored. And so when we think in this way a little bit, we can see that things don't have the kind of objective existence, autonomous existence that they appear to have. They are empty of that. So here, all of these things like when we think too that our being alive, for example, we sort of have this sense that, oh, I'm alive autonomously, like I have my own existence. But when you really begin to examine, look at all of the things that are necessary for us to be alive, all of the various kinds of conditions of our body. We have to be breathing, we have to get certain nutrients, we have to get certain things. And there are many causes and conditions that are necessary for that have to come together for us to be alive and sustain ourselves. It's maybe a little bit easier to recognize this, say, when we get older and the conditions have changed. Maybe before we were able to move really fast, to go about in a way where we sort of felt like we had our autonomy. And as we get older, it may sort of be like we're about to fall down as we're walking, and we can see that there are so many things that we depend upon for our health and our life. Like, for example, if we don't breathe for a number of breaths, we're not alive anymore. We have this sense that like, oh, my life, my sort of body is autonomous. It exists from its own side. But when we begin to do a little bit of analysis, we can see that that is absolutely not the case.
Oh yeah. That engine driver was to the Kelatene. Engine driver was the Abuja Samlutana. Net Tongbani said the Samluko Yara, Samlut Seminal Charto Guara. Oh, this year. To the Kelatene, don't go resid. To the game on Boja Sogbalatene. You want any debuted that they are to Kudoa. Oh, teacher. Tene tagbet and dress and little need of shade. Tene tagbet and said, a Koran or the pa, Penangazo Kansarva, Soso Kansarva, Kansa, what to do young gang, Kansar or do. Some year again. Can't do it. Yeah. Oh, Karsor. Kansa in the Pumbungabo Karol at Tene tagbet, you was a door. Pumbungabo, Garanzolo Pumbungayora, Sokuchi or Semchi or Namju Church tak bar shwe denge ngo set shwe sobo dowa sobo che yore sugi pumbu sigra ane ina ngo set shwe che de semde dowa che da ha konge shi dowa se shi re ba che ha konge so ate du nyonge chi sobo da menda sobo de tu du tu bare sheba de de tu du tu kado de yip da de ke yo mare ina sobo le ten che ko ya ke onge che tension level joa to wula tene takwa sigdo kumbu nga la tene takwa res kumbu nga bu karung la tene takbe kibu kansa tenyi sigda namju tenyi bene kansa sudu tende sil sigde sigora o tende nga zo nga sete kansa de karil sigora sana soboche semche oroche dushiche soboche semche ro net namju ne choa tewada tunghe tangyum chi nyong dengede wese toboche takba yong degedwa o yabu duwase yabu medusi ti chi dusi choa di chukchenbu yora soya tangdal nga zo tari chaya da kanga yong yora jikten bazo soya de tahe chen da tunghe chen tuzi tangdal eni bazo makawa da mekawa da kanga chaya yora soa ene dushi se o ti yabu du ti yabu medu ti pari se ti kangbari ti chi re se samlo dushi taur se bashi duwa ti samsa soya pumbu dushi pumbu ra nambar shibe pumbu che nen dushi ji pumbu se dushi ji pumbu se do semba yawa da meke wa da longma tenge la chawal pa ju chongen ge simju shi duwa tila semba se gora yezin she gogo tang go ko tila gogo tang go sam pen shi ta go na kol pen ta go yabu chi che go samsa yawa da meke chola semba shebe semba duwa semba se gora yeda ane kondro nga je cha do la so ba tzu ka ga del duchi ji pumbu se gora kumbu shibu kangro ma yin ge ngara so yo den ge del duchi ji pumbu se gora la la chana sobo pa sha rwa sem pa sha so che duchi che ye ma yin ge pumbu ngara so yo den ge kondro nga je cha do la so ba ka ri na so le duchi ji pumbu se gora kumbu nga ma do nga zul ke me do a zo yo sa de ate chi lam na ya
Mm. So here then, dependently originated or dependent arising, by contemplating this, the way in which things arise due to many causes and conditions, this can allow us to have an idea of emptiness. We can have a sense of emptiness arise in the mind. And so here there is then dependent origination in the sense of being dependent upon causes and conditions. And then there is dependent designation. So here, when we talk about like the person is being the one who experiences suffering and happiness and so forth. This person is something which is designated in dependence upon any of the five aggregates. So it could be on the basis of a person's form. We designate, oh, that is a person, or on the basis of their consciousness. And so here again, we have these five kind of aggregates. Our form is substantially existent. That has a form to it as a kind of substance, whereas our consciousness is not established as having any kind of form or substantiality to it, but in dependence upon this collection of the five aggregates or any of the five aggregates, we designate a person. We have this idea of an I. And so this can come, again, from like looking at someone's aggregates, seeing that form and thinking, oh, that is a person. Or it can arise, we can have a sense of I based upon our thoughts or our feelings. Like when we have various feelings. This is one of the five aggregates. And this is the component of having that sense of pleasure or pain in relation to various things. Then there is our kind of discrimination or discernment, where we have a sense of refining, like, or identifying things. Oh, this is good, or this is bad. This is a house. This is a person, and so forth. And then there is the the fifth aggregate of, I'll translate it as conditioning factors. And this here is referring to the kind of karmic imprints that have been laid down, particularly as related to our intentions. When we have those kinds of intentional acts that we engage in, like, oh, I need to deceive somebody, and then we go and we do that, or we, oh, I need to benefit somebody, and so forth. This kind of fifth aggregate is sort of the catch-all for the things that don't fit into the other aggregates of feeling form, feeling, consciousness, or discrimination. And so here, other than our 5 aggregates, there's nowhere that we can locate or designate the person. So in this way, the person is said to be something that is designated in dependence upon this basis of designation, any of the 5 aggregates.
Oh yeah. Ubungabu karungwe. La tene pa tagido ho dit on ye mendara che ho tashi res mingdara. Dit tareshas mingda di palares di mire sera. Mina ne tashi re ndu re sire re se pa mingdagido. Ne korange sano me sosu mingdi lapsona. O tashi slas o ngaye samsa namsa. O tengido nga tashi samcha ya ndu. Eko mingta che ngunzi che ba tashi ser mada rangune tashi chi ke mara rangune tashi chi ne konje mingma da kana tashi se kanga thongo gure ike thongo mara tendu tashi ke mara pa mingta ke to mingta inde ko la sobo chi do sona tashi do do se sobo tebo meduna tashi tos nag do sera tashi lega chikdo lagwa ga chichigune tashi lega chikdo saura lagwa di tashi marwa sobu tashi marwa taana shi semba mejiwa chito na semba mejiwa tsoa chino tatire tashi kiwu mendu se tatire ko semba tsoa yabu reto na tashi tawa do kiwu do se tatire kiwu yu samtire samgidwa tako pumbu ngabu karo degi chawa cheba chilya ane kansa degi chawa chebali shaa kore mato chawa chenge loga ke yo maare kumbu ngamu karu le tene shenpa chige rawa chi yo maare ina ngaranzu samlo na kari gore sade nga sade rawa du tuba richo dinge sobu ra dinge go ra dinge lagwa ra sa dinge choa re nge sheba re kaga che sosu de yan lokso rawa du tuba richo yo samgido as a round to Rangun, years some get it. That's so good at Tilo Wang to get a Chita Kangala, Katanging sort of Chichi, years some good. Or Tilo round to Truba Zimbaso, and some Lunalet are round to Truba Tiore. Ranguna, Ranging Oys, as the Ranging Oil, Narachi to be some good mother. Pumbunga Rama Ingen Pumbunga let Tenepa, any music with Trashes. But this time I use some rochig mare. When I send it to Madoke, your mare. Age, Bunga Karunga Chow Chesona, Age Chow Chow Shower. Chow Chenge Logaj, Pumbula Madrid, Loga your mare. Draw Boche, Sobol, and a combat of Duchi to Drugis or Mato. Combat Javati Mayangas, Logaj, and draw book, Dronge Kansachi loss to your maro. Tako. Ora mayenga dakshi sigra dakshi am chashe se chora ambare jine koda ke gon chikpa sabala sobare re de ko chashe mambu yora tezo chashe sigra dakshi re dal tene ne de khangba re spa ta sharwa tina ne chik de re se che yo mare yip te mare khado te mare re ne mare ina tele tene takba samla khangba sha gore khangba yakbu do se ra Kangba Shikso said, Kondachi Shikson, the Kangba Shikso, Shakudoa. O Tinashi. That and the Karisha was like Bungabu Karu, the Chawache, but the let Aga Chawache, Shakudoa. In a Garanzo, Tamlenalia, Pumbungabu Karu, which Chawache, but the loss of Sosa, Mangaranga Chigu, Andrew Yosam, Andrew Yosam Sarah, and then Lega the Chigu Yosamsa. Now, Yamdo Chichi, some Logacha, some Lokodoa. But the ring around to your Mares, what Bungabu Karu let change it, talk about some race. Lo Wanga Shagwasam, Chashe that the Shilet and a look in Dichi in Das Mintasona, but get some Giremato. What's any Rayachi Omare, Narazo Samlina Yavanachi, Rawachi Omare. Rawachi Yona, that's any Ragua, Kagrese. So put in the Maravase. No, tate. Sem dene maruase. De maru pumbunga bure senga mato yo matinga ne kaya rigme doa. Ile loso ya taji yo rebesena ngombo sebu na she logachi. Loso yo mara. Hi deko Bungabu Karuna Tene Tawa, Anya Jiwangi Shagwa, Dakshitan Doxilla Tenjin Delne Yoba, Dakshitan Doxilla Tene Yoba, Dakshitan Doxilla Tene Nico Yoba Chagiormato, Dakshitan Doxilla Teme Koran Rawangi Yoba Shikasa Bangaya Bashitue Medua. Oh, the Rob to love the Tati and the Madrochas.
Mhm. So here it is then independence upon any of the 5 aggregates that we designate a person. So we see someone's form, a particular form, and we say, oh, that's Tashi, or oh, that's Tundrup. And we see like the person has this kind of thought that they exist from their own side, not just merely designated upon whatever of the 5 aggregates. But if it were the case that, say, Tashi were established from his own side, then it would have to be that anyone who encounters the 5 aggregates or that form would immediately think Tashi, would just have that kind of recognition. But that isn't the case. But when we see someone like moving, we see their form aggregate moving, we say, oh, he's going. Or certain activities like, oh, he's sick, or oh, he's speaking, based upon the kind of mental thoughts that they're having, like, oh, Tashi's unhappy today, and so forth. We designate independence upon that, but when we try to search for, well, where's the Tashi, other than the activity of the aggregates, whether it's like that mental unhappiness or the physical, the form moving, we can't find some kind of Tashi that exists, or some kind of person that exists from their own side. We designate independence upon any of those 5 aggregates, the collection or any of the 5, a person, but they don't have this kind of existence from their own side. Yet we have this sort of sense as though there were a separate, like, I that were somehow sort of in charge of the aggregates. Like, we think, oh, this is my head, and this is my hand, and this is my body, and so forth, as if there were this autonomous I established from its own side that kind of controls these aggregates. And we have in our thoughts this sense of this I as existing from its own side, independent of being designated on this particular basis of designation. So again, if we were to look beyond the 5 aggregates, there's nothing aside from the 5 aggregates that we could point to as being the person. But yet when we say, like, if someone is going, we say, oh, Tashi is going. That physical movement, that form, that isn't Tashi. That one aggregate isn't actually the person. So here, again, there's this relationship of dependent designation, that on a particular basis of designation, or on a particular appearance, a basis of arising, we then designate something. Like you see a collection of walls and windows and doors and so forth, and designate, oh, that's a house. But when we try to find, well, what is the house within that, that's nothing beyond that mere designation. You can't find some sort of house that exists from its own side. But yet we can still say that the house exists. It exists as a mere dependent designation. And so when our aggregates do this basis of designation does a particular action, we can say, oh, I did that thing. But we can't actually identify some sort of person or self that is separate, apart from those aggregates, that exists beyond being a mere designation, being merely posited by mind. So if we search for the thing designated within the basis of designation, it's actually not something that we can find, but it still appears. So again, other than, we have this sense generally that, like, there's this I that is kind of in control of the aggregates. But if one is to search for that, you can't find something apart from the aggregates themselves that is that self, but yet there's nothing you can point to within the aggregates that is that self. So therefore, the person, the self, is a mere designation. So here, this level of dependent designation means that in dependence upon a particular basis of designation, there's the act of designating, and that sort of merely designated existence is the conventional existence of phenomena.
Oh, yeah. That and that, and that was the Rawatu Trubat Medoa, ngaranzu namji samlu nalya nga se soso ge rawa cheche ngarang chi yo samgidwa chanda pungbu dan sowa dan dushi dan chi shibichele tochin drelne ene nga cha gu yo samgimedwa so pa sha ne soso yo nare she rawa du truba sigra rawa du truba rawa wa sigidwa rawa chi yo mare shanda le tochin drelne ne ko res mingzam ji pa sha ju re ma to Rama inge dindrek mambochi tsone tezuli pa mingtane ichi reesi labgidwa. Ane sosoge o dindrechi samna nyomo chondura. Nga tene takpa samato nga rawa shivachi me samna. Nga samza rawa du truba yu sam nga la shenja kiya ta. Nga la shenja shukchimbo yu de nga yi se ra nga migta nawa lu ta nga yi se shenja shukchimbo ta. Tezu yungu marwa. Nyomo chondu dwaya tandaliya. Nyomo tsawa ne pa meba soya tandaliya tongba nidi komgora, tami komgora. Nyomo yongsa tsawa de sosu tsane ngugura ngo tsu sade. Nga sam nga rawa chik. Nga kungbu ta chi tazula toy chin drel ne shama gunga nga rangi chi rangzu toba sigira. Tak soba, che soba sigidwa. Nga rangzu samba nashi nga de yona ko tsene nye yoba chikore. Akche chene nga samza rawa chene ti kagi baas kaban do se sokpo nal duge, sokpo dirwe, sem rewe, simchung nal duge, ile losun duge, tinte chene raya yo mare. Enta nga meo resne meo mare, tene takpa samla nga shaa gore. Teso le to chen drel ne, ene teso le chen dri mandi chonsuna nga duge, nga tegi, nga nasha, nga chiche siti shaa gora. Toa ditu nyonge chi nga yo are meo mare. Rawa de yo mare. Tenjin rebar juwan samde yuwa rese wa ti samlul kona ene nga le shenja de shung dhugara ene nga ye samlu de shung dhugara shenja de chita nga yuwa re tene takwa samde nga ta nga ye kangba ta nga ye chicha yuwa ra nga ranzu ba shuk chenpo chi zegidwa nga de tsawa ne ya shto ene nga ye chicha shuk chenpo de shenja shuk chenpo yuwa re shenja shuk chenpo ye de tesu dan dring mandi ti tunjin dan dring mandi chungsa ene kondu shuk chenpo yuwa ra tene chakdaayo, tene chanda kanga nga chi chadol sa kanga yungu ra. Tezo yonsa tsawa de nga samsa samla tangda de mandri ne yungu wa re se. Tende tongpa nye taa me paa se de. Nyomo tsawa ne paa me pa soku ne ti samla tangu ra. Nga ra zo ti samla tang. Takcha che ne tang nga de rangwa chi nge samla kora ne shi yo na. Ene sokpo de rewe se. Sokpo nal nga rangwa chi duwe se. Susu kangdi ne che samla tang nalo nangcha kari yo re. Yan dine che leba da kanga samlata mindu samna. Sobu nala nga rawa chi minduwa. Ane mika sheba nawe sheba ne sheba che sheba tuzuri tiye yo mara. Rawa nga yo mara. Tsoa dewa dunga tangyo tu tiye mara. Tinde tsena ku ragu minduwa, yinba chi minduwa. Time edu ta tene takwa samse. Shu tamze tene takwa sam. Takshida chashela tene. Le pa takwa te tsamgi ko chawa chingi chi shawar mato rawa te yo mara o te sunza docha shetan timu sumsi shek dowa nam yu ganzo siba kolo te chi duza tsawa te le pakwa chi che ne chui chi che cha chi che sukdowa mambu tangbu yonsa de pakwa de mishibe mongba soso ne chui de soso haku mara soso kande yinba de soso haku yo mara soso ne ta ngone le meba chi soso yoba samlo kokdowa dila mongba se norjen samlo koya dila mongba pakwa de shagyo ra ane docha cha che shetan tu tu che soso kyure dila tena tena yana chunyi shenda kanga yungu re sigyo ra o tati rob silav na dris mangdos ya
Mhm. So here, although we have this sense of this I or self that is somehow like autonomously established, that isn't like connected or dependent or contingent upon our aggregates. Really, when we begin to examine and look at this, the I, the self, is a mere name that's posited on that basis. And thinking about it in this way, that although it seems as though we have this like independent, autonomous kind of self that exists from its own side. When we reflect on this and see that no such self exists, this helps to reduce our afflictions. The strong kind of clinging and grasping attachment to our own side comes from the sense that we have this sort of like autonomous I. And in order to get rid of our afflictions and get rid of them from their roots, we contemplate this kind of dependent origination, this understanding of emptiness, of selflessness. Again, there's this sense of that there's like an I that exists from its own side, that's somehow able to bear analysis, that if we were to search for it, we could find something that we could point to. And when we then begin to look within that basis of designation, the aggregates, well, is the I in the form? Is it in our various, like the parts of our physical body? No, we can't point to it there. We can't point to it within our consciousness or our various feelings and so forth. None of those things individually can be identified as this I or this self. And so we might think, well, does that I not exist? Well, no, the I does exist, but as a mere dependent designation. There is an I that experiences happiness and suffering. There is an I that goes and comes and so forth, but it doesn't have the kind of existence that we attribute it to, that it appears to have when we sort of think of I. And so that strong kind of, so long as we have that strong grasping at an I, that sort of strong clinging, we will have an attachment to our own side and this kind of aversion, animosity toward others that again lead us to create non-virtuous actions. And so it is through this meditation on emptiness and selflessness that we can get rid of those afflictions. If it were the case that such an autonomous, independent kind of an I existed, it would have to be something that we could point to. Like it would have to be, say, within our form aggregate, or is it within the various consciousnesses, our visual, our mental, our oral consciousness, and so forth. If it were the case that it existed in that way that it appears, we would have to be able to locate it. But as we go through these various things, our various minds, our various feelings, the various discriminations that we engage in, there's nothing that we can point to. But there is a merely designated I, something that is designated on this basis of designation, a whole put on these parts. And so here, as we often see in the sort of a visual depiction of dependent origination, in the center, it's depicting this pig and a snake and a hen, which represent our three fundamental poisons of ignorance, attachment, and hatred. And so here it is that fundamental ignorance, that not knowing, that delusion that leads us to then have attachment and hatred, and again continue to cycle in samsara.
Oh yeah. Oh, that and there conga to tap the shirab ni isje. Oh, ni shegdoa. Shirab de lechida mambu yorwa shirab mambu yore. Ne shirab just oh the tameto be shirabase. Oh, tombani to be shirabase. What the yomo tawa nepa mavswet and dollars. You come go yora. Namsada samlata namsa ko nyomo kanga shindu tende. Lo parta member kanga namsa yendo tende ye yomare. Homa mebane meti chotele tangzi da tazul kom de ora. Tine ko samlutana. Meta melu samluta. O tene rao ta nam yunge tende samge ora tende te mendo a samsa. Asamle shagi na. Tenge ora tene yar dura. Dinga zu komje mare shenda chere samsa nge yungu mare samsa yushane ko yushare yungu marwa. Ana she jambada nyingji chanju semse to so samla tangura. Semje tule chawachi yo mare sam yawada tunge nyongere sam tule tunge mayo sho sama semje toa sam tunge mayo yawada demba churje samsa de samla ko ene semje kanga tundu ne ko yar dre yara ngazo. Kom se to namsa kom de namsa chi chaya yo namle pesal jute de che ko marwa. Semlen juata ya tonda rete yora. Yedo ko rangsur negi yo mare ke komna ke pengi medu sam tengiro ngazo namsa ji pene toa shibuji chongure de ke yongu marwa. Et yo mangbone pajo meeting chotel kom de yora. Ne kom ne ko ngema na shinje degi yo mare. 다른 로요라 가라도 소화데 랩토고 말아 남사 마도코 좀 아주 유시하니까 좀 장게를 지내라 좀 장게 소보 장게를 지내 그 자네 공부 이게 계속 어떻게나 나한테 자네 가져 자네 야르요 말은 아주 미 자네 근데 거기서 봐좀 되는데 요 말아 세전도 내봐라 세전도 거부 컴퓨터 제도 세전 내봐라 시다 섭소 마전에 담부 공부니 좀 더군네 섭소 마전에 공부니 좀 더 말해 공부 추장에 많이 오르래 냐가요라 어제 잠바다 닝지 chanju고 심세 섬겨인데도 어제 공부이네야 세전도 내가 말해줘라 세 계란들 야른도요 말했어요 세전 말에 그 야른도고요래 남산 야른도 하던 가지고 싶지 하고 또 말와 남산에서 더버 연구 말도 신갈 소리지 답샤요 나한테도 야 칼리칼리 끼고데 남산 와도 합도 칼리 아끼와 신가죠 하고 에메도 하고 칼리칼리 좀 야른도고요 어디 나시 양반이 이제 자주 심범나 다 시다 야르도에게 메도섬 예삼에 메레 랑도르게 내려 태좀 잡지 쳐서는 어디 하고 소서 찌하고나 탈베 시초고 인샤라 하르바세 강바마서 찍바자서 찍마 이게 시럽디 쏘고 열고 알리칼리 텐데 전에 야우지 하고 태좀 매버세 아니 삼르다 야르도 마도 남산 삼르다 하다가 강가 똑바게 рем에서 되버시 아요 말도 어야 어디실은 되래 야
So here we need to develop again method and wisdom in order to get to the state of Buddhahood. And it's important. There are many different types of wisdom, but this wisdom realizing emptiness, this wisdom of dependent origination and emptiness is extremely important. It is on this basis that we can eliminate the root of samsara. But we shouldn't have this sense that it's like, oh, well, I like sort of like turning on a light. When you turn on a light, the darkness is instantly eliminated. It isn't the same way with this. We have to habituate our mind. We use this word sort of meditate, but meditate has this connotation of habituation. We can't expect to immediately generate a feeling about these things, but rather it takes repeated reflection, contemplation again and again in order to create that kind of transformation within our mind. Like things like love and compassion. We also need to contemplate, to think about these things in order for them to improve. To come to see other sentient beings as just the same as us, we have to think, oh, they too experience suffering and want to have happiness and so forth. We need to actually work with our mind, think about these things and generate a kind of experience through repeated reflection, through, again, accustomizing ourselves to or habituating ourselves to these things. So it isn't instant. We can't sort of expect for something to be like flipping on a light switch and all of a sudden all of that darkness is gone. But rather, if we do engage in this way, we mentally engage with these topics, we won't remain the same. We will improve. Our mind will develop and improve. So when it comes to things like sort of physical activities, like if you're wanting to jump really far or something like that, you can, you don't expect to immediately be able to jump as far as you will be able to jump, but rather you train your body and you get to a point where maybe you can do like a certain really long length of a jump. But it's the case that for our physical kinds of trainings, there's a limit to those things. There's a limit past which you won't be able to jump, you won't be able to improve anymore. But when it comes to our mental improvement, that kind of mental development, there isn't that same limit. There is no limit to our ability to develop love and compassion and bodhicitta and so forth. And so, again, we don't expect instant results with these things. It's not as though you plant your crops and you go back a minute later and expect them to have sprouted, but rather these are things that take time. We plant these seeds, and with continued habituation and the right kind of conditions, they will bring forth fruit. So these sorts of things are like creating the foundation of the kind of the house of our liberation. So again, if we take the time to mentally engage with these things, that's how we'll generate a real feeling and develop the kinds of realizations, these mental realizations not having the same kind of limit as our physical activities.
어야 단데래 다대시 당한테 대진 대바를 좀 마와서도 단들이야 대진 대바를 좀 마와들 수수래 텐데셔요라 단데나랴 남바 산제베 루다마와 남네 뉴주 진지된 영어보남 랑게 주단께 대바 잠라 대진 대바를 좀 마와 연라서 남바 강가게 뇌진지된다 주지 심전을 속바 대조 남바 탐제대 지dengi 제바보 딱바 그 제바보다 지소라 소바 텐데 제바 말에 유단께 소바라 텐지 인주르에 왕게네 이쪽이와레세 내가 저 텐지 레버리 좀 설루 장배도 값을 송고요 봐 텐지 레버리 좀 숨다 같이 송고도 와 요아메베 껴라 텐지 좋아 시인 봐 유단께 소소나 그래 건데베 용 그래세 유단께 맞춰내 깨고 말해 유단께 강가 쳐서나 현다지 마게나 삼나 고께 용 그래 유게 맞춰나 깨나 삼나 주된 제바보 깨나 삼나 깨두고 말해 유단께 쳐 맞춰래 맞도 현다지 대바 요마이다 진들 때니 고께 봐 말해시거라 그 요함에 봐서 그런게 요하게 되고 말 현달 되고 말해 그런 것을 통해 그 유단께 가르고 그도네 뒤에 대에 뒤쳐서나니 그 깨운 그래. 맞춰내 끼고 말해서거라. 요함에 뵙게 때니 좋아서 그런 게 삼로. 깨나 삼사 마게나 삼사 근데 장장게 대바부 요할 때니 끼고 말해서 이러. 요함에 뵙게 때니. 미다바 또 매게 때니 좋아. 유단 깨데 미다바서 거마도 딱배 유단 깨시게 깨요 말해. 미다바다 또 매게 때 깨다 유단 깨 ये मामू चौबल तने के वर्मादो युची चिंता से कैसे राव चिक सुकी ऐसे वो मारवा विदावा तुम्हें क्या लेते ने चौस नेबे क्या लेते ने चौस या क्यों कांगा ड्रेवर के मारे सो तुम मांग बच्चे चिक नेबा युवारे सांटे बच्चे ने साबियों दा तो तेंबे चावा चिगरा तेंबा तेंसा दि चिगरा शुद्ध जो ने लेंबे चावा चिगरा ने तो या 롱도도 야 깨가 자와치거라 네바 때모 많이 봐 교단 깨를 소소소 네바를 요랬지 이거는 마도 규칙 그 강가 용서도 깨트고 말해서 봐라 네베 깨를 때는 좋아서야 돼 봐. 좀 전에 돼봐 대등 아주 네 가르쳐라 나 제베네 교단 제발에 좀 천이시거라 교면에 끼고 말아 교단 제안이 깨고라 양배바에네 교면에 끼고 세워라 교단 제발 제초 네 다보 매배 깨랬던 좋아서라 다보 왕규 징계 현다 주네 대 왕규 깨어 말해서라 어야 디 마와들다 텐지 레버죠 마와스 치르발요 말 나바짱자레스 이셰기오라 야 대시소나
So then turning back to the text in this section on 59, the proponents of dependent arising. So again, whereas proponents of Buddhist tenets assert that all composite things, both animate and inanimate, arise in dependence on merely their respective causes and conditions, proponents of non-Buddhist tenets do not assert such a dependent arising. So here, when it comes to the ways in which those Buddhist proponents think of dependent arising, they first assert that there is no sort of dependent or no production from a cause that is the sort of will of a divine creator. So for them, there are these three sort of conditions, 3 or 5 conditions of dependent arising. And so it's not as though there's the necessity for the will, the intention of a creator in order to bring forth a result. Rather, if you have the coming together of all of the necessary causes and conditions, then that's going to bring forth that result. There's no need for some sort of a will or a kind of divine creator to be involved. Only those sorts of causes and conditions that we can observe, that we can see, are necessary to bring forth the kind of result at hand, not the will or thought of a divine creator. So the first, again, is production that is from a cause that is not the divine, a divine creator's will. And second characteristic is that this is production from multiple impermanent causes. To assert that a permanent kind of a cause can bring forth results is not logical, is not tenable. And so too, to assert that one cause could bring forth a result, there are numerous causes and conditions that are necessary to bring forth a result, not just a single kind of a cause. And then it needs to be a cause that has the ability, the capacity to give rise to that particular effect. It's not as though anything can generate anything, but rather something needs to have the particular capacity to generate a particular effect. And so again, we have like with the various elements, the earth element has the quality of supporting, and the water of moistening, and so forth, heat, fire of sort of ripening. It's not as though even those exist intrinsically independently of themselves. Those causes and conditions come together, and that's how things come into being. And so then there are, if we expand out to sort of 5 conditions of the cause, the fourth is that there is an existent cause. Those like the Charvakas who assert the kind of causeless production, this refutes that idea. Something has to exist in order for it to be able to bring about a result. And then finally, the fifth kind of quality is having a selfless cause. Not the case that there's some sort of like self-existent kind of a cause, like whether it's a divine creator or something like that. And so those who assert these 3 or 5 kind of conditions of causality are proponents then of dependent arising.
Oh yeah, that do it. Yeah. But they tune in the Darisudo. But the Shandita Langashin is Shandis Lingema, and Jum then the paper Kapkira. Yagagene to the Mao Shanda to the Sigara. Shandita Langashikin is to the Mao Gashiki. Nuchi Jungo Dinam. You may vale Kawayes, Kambimba Tabu, you may your. You are Kurataski on your essay, Ramju de Sigara. Oh, Angashiki, you your essay. You did Tambu, you did Takbares, Takba, it's all serve. You talk about the Sigara. You talk about Gashiki, you should Debu Rani. You Tani don't go by Meseva, she go by Meseva, she Larumbar, Taurikiwala. You talk about Chitso said they talk about it. 이 내감나 군 제부 강가 요요 그래. 아주 무슨 게 요도 셀토게 말해. 근데 바로체를 공 대치소 그 수트용 그래. 그래서 내가 아주 무슨도 통경은 말 세게 와래. 당분에 응말 교도서 매갱 제부치 요 말해서 와라. 지소에 돼서 제부 강가 요래. 아주 통토게 요 말해. 제마 그래서는 옹부 무슨 게 요도 수세토게 와래서. 교도소 매변 제부 요 말해서 나바에는 교도소 제부 요 말와. 교도소 제부 요 말해. 교대긴 교화체는 치수 제부 깨고라. 아니 동어발 메세와라. 여바 실라리 한거발 세와라. 깨와 깨요래서. 라레 랑신지 주베 다니 셴베 유딱바다서니야. 라레 랑신지 주베 타데 연게게. 유딱바세라. 유텐딱바세라. 와. 네 원주 딱바세라. 텐델 때니 깨그레스 켈레게와라. 그래서 강가 땡지 데버죠 아마 어디 말해서 와라. 랑신지 주베 다니 랑신지 주베 다니 제 주셔야 되니까 당이 타데베죠 딱바다 유텐 참에 딱바다 아 딱바라 주긴 직대지 제바 보소 대절 되니까 예수도 so that tendre maore go mara so tome juchi ni le kewa so tambu judi chik ma do yo mara yele tene te takwa se te ge ni debu ka ga chik re so ra kiriba deba yo che sa arto debu ngobo nam ode ale tiba chilam na ya
Mhm. So then continuing in the text, it says, the proponents of non-Buddhist tenets do not assert such a dependent arising, and their assertions are as follows. So here the Charvakas hold that the world and its inhabitants were self-existent from the beginning, produced without any cause. So here, this is the idea of the things being causeless, that they're just sort of self-existent without having any sort of cause necessary for their arising. Or you can have the Samkhya, the Samkhyas who assert that an effect, which is the same nature as its cause, exists concurrently with this permanent cause, but in a non-manifest nature. So the Samkhyas who assert some sort of like a primary substance that is the substrate of everything, they would say that all results exist at the time of that cause, but they exist in this non-manifest nature and later become manifest at the time of their sort of resultant phase. But here, that's again not logically coherent with asserting dependent origination. And then still others hold that things are produced from the outset by a single permanent cause, whether this cause be a permanent entity called time, which is an intrinsically established cause with a different nature from its effect. So something like an idea of time being that which is the creator of everything, that's somehow permanent and it is intrinsically different from the effects that it creates. Or whether it is to assert that there is a permanent partless atom-like particle serving as the building block of the entire world system, wherein one would then assert that that's sort of the single permanent cause of everything that arises, or whether that kind of cause is asserted to be a self-existent permanent divine creator. So these are the kinds of views that non-Buddhists that do not accept dependent origination would assert.
oh yeah arto se tambu kidu tinde chero arto nebe kapsu go da ene negro nebe kapsu ya debu ngobo nam ene ja kechi ene ja kechi lan jiba ma yembe ngor ne badas namba sanje bene ko kesa na ngobo kandeshina kechi re ne jidu go ra na ngara su miro mi sombo chete ora mi sombo chete yo bade ko kechi re ne kyujin san ya chi chegor ma do ngar ke sar de be rawan de chene sombo chete yo mar do utang go do kala sa ora kanga che shibul teshin del ku do kyujin de zol te ne kadu sombo chete yo ar ma do sombo chete takbar se rawan che jo me ba se nge ma so de de tan de so de re de o mara kadu li kyujin le te go do ite ko de kashe lubur to ko me sha shin do ge de yo go do 그래서 그도 교진 강가를 끼기 야 선부 대고라 매도를 차셨는데 매도 누가 뭐야 선부체 야부체 중부체 대도가 그도 추다 롱다 저도 따다다다시 거래 대야 선수거마다 그러 라완체 추대게 요 말아 제 트레시란 남사한테 지르 축감선나 남사콘 주안도 살마한테 지르라 어디 손자 가서래 말도 내봐 나야 뭐고 강가데 깨지는 줄 비와래 जो लो तो जो ठादेंगे देख दो तारा तगने पर तंदा तेशा समगे और ती मारो किसी ने जिगे वाला कुदा केंगे जिगे सिरा ती मैंने लो ड्रोसों योंग मारो ने ड्रो दे योरा ने को क्यों थे से दे को लो बाहर से देख दो इने को पे ने जिगे छेगोरा तिने संगारा जो संबो से दे जुजिन कांगे छाने या संबो से दे योर मातो Again, my son was a David Rawas and then I could encourage and imagine a question which a day or Mara. And do you tell me Kichi Masan now was an era? Dushe tamche medabas, kichi rakba gyode chida mezu haku yora. Rakba, tambulo chunju tende, ta kesha, ta tende shasha. Shing dengi ma chunju, ta tende rakba de haku yora, ngusumdu tongure, medaba rakba, gyua chimbade. Kichi re ne gyua duyo de haku yora mato. Nangba sanje mato shenda ke ti shegi yora mare. Gyua dona kajin chite, ente ne shine meba chagre serchi mato. Kichi gyua dona medaba de ti shegi yora mara. Oh, Alexo. Ngo neba ta Adun debi ngobo nam tene jan kechi lan jikba mare sigora. Kechi lan jikna konjo chawa chetuk mare samgora. Kechi lan jikna chawa chetuk yore. Lo tuzu kechi jigi yore ngazu mi taya da peche loya da kange pentok doa. Ti sonza ko kechi ma yina chawa chetuk re. Nangba chena midagba yina laga chetuk re. Midagba ma yina dagba yina chawa cheyo mare sigora. Ko nyuru che chikna shinche desha na. Laga chetuk marwa. Medaba sonzani ko chawa chiya yore. Debi ngobo nam tene ja kechi ma mayin bara. Mayin be ngoro neba. Parin jikba na ya, ranga tsawe kyude la timdin rwa. Parin jik dhudu, rangzhenba tozu ni chitso ol paa timbara sikra. Tambu tsu tuenge chore, til paa timdo re sikwara. Jikden cheba bu kele nga tik su tibara, ta kuku medu sam su tu shabara se. De kele gra, ngara zunde ti nangba ina ti kele mardo. Rwam rangi cheba bu kange cheba ti suru tuban dewa yin la se. Uma ba ta na drebu kewe su shende dewa te dar yina ne se. Uma ba na shi chige na drebu kewe su shende te zoge dewa na shi tende yina se gora shenji trupta maa tuzu se gora chagage. Teta ne gyu meba le kewa se go kashege. Kashege mitunbe gyu le kewa se. Mitunba se na drebu te kewa lan drebu te dan kewa dan tunbe gyu shi kora. Tsawa nali kengengi ngobu che ne ko te dan tunbe tsawa yu se kora. Ramuna kengeshi ne tramu ke se ke gora. Koran tunbe nyeleng gyu da te dan tunbe lenji che gen gyu che le teni kigiri mato. Takwa yengengi gyu che gen drebu kigiri na ne mitunbe gyu le ken dora. Gyu te kewa te dan drebu te ke dan ko tumbu shi kora. Gyu gyurwa che dan te drebu kewa tumbu meba che gyu takwa che. Lega che ma che te tengi yen drebu kandri si kigiri si kora. Kawa che tuku mara. Ne takwa drebu kigiri ne takwa koran yewa sam mato. Yanda ko marwa. Ne takwa rasi drebu kegeba yen kora. Takwa drebu kena. Yana tuiche la ma kena katu ina kaya yo mara ko. Kabri ma ke. Yu kashal ke ye yu kashal ma kena karasi ne. Gyuan ronga gyudele gyuan ronga ni kon gyuan ronga yen se. Yu yongu yordo. Takwa ina. Ni drebu li gyuan ronga tende yongu yo mara. Nangbo chena. Kange cheba te duwa. Uma bata na drebu kewe su shende dewa te da. Yena. Te da ne kyu me bata mitunbe kyu le. Drebu kewa. Mitunbe kyu le. Kewa da kyu me singa kashe kani. Mitunbe kyu le tende kewa dewa do si wara. Kewa yinbe se. Dilen drebu nam. Kudan ken la. Tenchen drebara. Jungwa mebe aso. Tezo liya. Drebu tozo tenchen drebara jungwa kewa sigma ares. Tenchen drebara jungwa kewa sini. Kudan ken la tenchen. Ten gyurwa chene ti nekam ne Sutra yawatala. Tenchen drebara jungwa segure se. Kunzu tili tenchen drebara jungwa tanda yaw ma ares wara. Mebe shende tedan deba namne tenchen drebara jungwa. Mawa ma ino so. Kunzu tende mawa ma ares de. Tidanta kyula teni drebu kigre se da labkirwa. Ina ko ngone tane kisu de yaw ma ares. Jambiba ge pete nye tena. Tanda yungure de sege ki marangi ma jambiba yawara. Shinga tabkan ro chi che kunzu tsawa kye wara. Kele teni ti kiku tuto samgi wara. Yumile kye seri ko tangbun chungtan si samlu tangi kin mato. Tahasa kyume na kigre se. Lega ma che na kala ragre se. Sege maro kunzu ke. Kele teni ti kigre se laba samgi tenzi drebani chunga sege mare. Yun gyurwa che, nyelin gyurwa che. Ti negam na drebu kye wasi kuyo wara. Ya diba ti chi gyuna.
So, then these proponents of non-Buddhist tenets assert that once the things that are the effects have been produced, their entities remain without perishing each moment. So here, according to Buddhists, everything is not only impermanent, but it's not only dependently originated in the sense of depending upon causes and conditions in order for it to come into being. But once that effect has come about, it doesn't sort of abide or remain in any way. Rather, things are momentary. So here, this again, when we look at all of the kinds of ways that things function and are, some people suddenly die. There's one like condition that is out of whack, and then suddenly they don't have the proper sort of causes and conditions to sustain life. It's not as though once a person is living, they are then living. That is the sort of state that they are at, and it's no longer subject to causality or in the ways that some of these non-Buddhists might assert. Or like if you have a flower, again, a flower, it's beautiful, it's there. It's not as though once that flower comes into being, it then just remains, but rather it's changing moment to moment to moment. And it is necessary for it to have the right kinds of causes and conditions for it to stay that way. So here we can give lots of examples of this, like, and sometimes we get confused because, for example, the electricity is on. So we have light that is here, and it seems like that light is sort of steady, it's stable, but it's actually dependent upon, and that's because there's a kind of continuity to the result that's coming about. But there's actually a momentariness to it. There's causes and conditions happening in every moment in order to bring forth that kind of light that we are experiencing. And so all composite phenomena are momentary in this way. It's not as though you have the cause and conditions come together and then that produces a result that somehow has a kind of nature that could abide. According to Buddhists, everything is, again, momentary. And it's easier for us to understand sort of coarse levels of impermanence. We can see, oh, I'm not the same as I was when I was a child. I get older. Oh, that tree gets bigger, and so forth. We can see that things change over time. But to have this kind of understanding of momentariness, of the fact that things are perishing in every moment, this is much more subtle. And it is a view that is asserted uniquely by the Buddhists. And so here, for this, those that would assert that there needs to be some sort of abiding nature, that causes and conditions produce a particular result, and then that must abide somehow. For them, they think that, well, if everything were to disintegrate in every moment, to perish in every moment, then how could anything function? But it's actually the opposite of that, that if there were some sort of static existence, we wouldn't be able to have functionality. It is only because things are momentary, changing moment to moment to moment, that they are able to function. If things were permanent, they couldn't function. Again, like if they're a permanent cause, it would always have to be generating results or never have done that. There's no ability for it to be occasional in any way. And so continuing in the text, this again being the view of those non-Buddhists, they would say that once the things that are the effects have been produced, their entities remain without perishing each moment. When such effects finally do perish, they either dissolve back into their initial cause or are withdrawn by the divine creator. So here again, this is the sort of view of those the results manifest and then they dissolve back into that primal, the primary cause and so forth, or they're withdrawn by the divine creator. Well, from the Madhyamika perspective, if an effect were to be produced in the manner that such non-Buddhists assert, it would be produced either causelessly or from discordant causes. So here, again, if it were the case that things were produced in this way that non-Buddhists assert, they either have to assert that there is no cause or that there is a sort of a discordant cause that leads to these various things. So for those those that assert some kind of a permanent cause. That would be a discordant cause. If you have impermanent things, how could they be caused by something which is permanent? By its very definition, it would either have to always be producing the results or never be able to bring that about. It can't be that there is sometimes a result and sometimes not. In a certain place, there's a result, in a certain place not. And so here it needs to be the case that there is a concordant sort of a cause. So again, these so read the text again, because again, if non-Buddhists have to assert that things would either arise causelessly or from some sort of discordant causes. And because such a position runs counter to the view that effects arise in dependence on concordant causes and conditions, such non-Buddhists are not proponents of dependent arising. So here, you would have to then accept that so by contrast, all proponents of Buddhist tenets propound dependent arising. And this dependent arising, again, entails that there be a concordant kind of a cause, as well as that there be a cause rather than things arising causelessly.
Darling. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, this was. You'll be talking to the watching below. Oh, yeah. Can you Jumi Tagbe Jukaya Mebar. Nearly the thing or Samba, all in number to that and the Maresra. Or call it Susana. You then dinam Toma Kiva and I kiss you on the Shebe. Shiribe to the Roa Nambe, La Shembe to the Ma Chaga to the Ma Shanda Shezu to the Medrade Sera. Deba my engine, Jumi Tagbe Jukaya Mebache. Tagbe Juyomar, Mitabe Jujakora. Raranging or Juru Nyelenge Juda, Nyelete Debuti Moro Sambala Rochen Genge, Injichige, Juda Cheba, and it could get to much Sobalet and showing better Deberjo Ma Yisha, Tanam Batenji Deberjo Ma Yisha, Chandeta that Tenji Deberjo Ma Maisha. Pardo get the Nebana, Pardo Nebatea, Shanda Chaneco, Kajilin Guachi Mara, Kajilin Gurochina. Keshimato Matevation Juana, the Drebuke to Maresa Viora, and Bachanico Keji Juachan and Drebuke to would intuition, Legachigora. Pardo Neba Naya, Jurmito Neba Maimba Rara Kuyele, Ran troops and the Keshig Jurachan in Medabang or Rancheso, Jesu Deshesa. Over condition of Kora Kesam Yene. Midaban Juracha and the code Rangshinki Yamdo Kesam Yene Ranches Chesan de Adesa. Ran Trusam Yene Midabang Oba to Gudesa, Ranches, Ran Trusam Yene Midabang Olia to Gudesagora. Tambutu Kachin Gone and Midawasha and Juando Tindeko Marisura. Ranches Chesan de Shesa. Harangi Rinda, Chimakeshi Gugin Matsawa, Gugin Matsawa. Gagin Shandaki Wanga Conjixona, Gagin Shandaki Wanga Luburdu Shijin Jigba de Eswara. Donna Tagbe Juda, Chebabu Loyoa, Meba Rani, Yawada, Tumbe, Nubadan, Dembe, Midaba to me, Hawada, Matawala, Sobalan, Debungo, Nam Tenu Luburdu Kesha, Luburdu Jigba Yimbe, Gaji Barsom, Yenega. Ando yang jurme takbe ngor neba misido jule takbe yo mare par neba tele debuke neba te takbe yo mare wa tama jigba de ko rangshin gi ga takbe ngo chen jigba te mare se medabe ngo chen jigba re ya tiba de chikona.
So, by contrast, all proponents of Buddhist tenets propound dependent arising. So they do not accept that the world and its inhabitants came into being in the ways asserted by non-Buddhists described above. So, in contrast to that, they hold that with no permanent, unchanging entity as their cause, phenomena arise from an aggregation of numerous causes and conditions. So again, we need to have, as it continues here, that is, in effect, arises from both its substantial cause that generates its respective form and cooperative conditions that simultaneously assist the substantial cause in becoming the entity that is its effect. So here it is the case that about one needs to have this substantial cause as well as those things coming together. And once that particular effect or thing, entity has come into being, it doesn't abide even for a moment. There can be a kind of continuity to similar moments, but there is not a static sort of remaining unchanging. So again, continuing here in the text, furthermore, once an effect is produced and abides, it cannot remain without undergoing change. So things are momentary. Immediately upon being produced, an effect has an impermanent nature that changes moment to moment. So there's no sort of coming into existence in a way that then has some sort of permanence or ability to remain. But rather, when we see that there is a kind of what appears to be remaining as it continues here, when it disintegrates, it perishes either due to the absence of causes and conditions capable of generating subsequent moments of a similar type in its continuum, or due to meeting with some other unfavorable condition that interrupts its continuity. So it can seem as though something has that sort of abiding nature due to having moments of a similar type. But the end of that comes when either it's there's an absence of the causes and conditions necessary to sustain that, or there's some sort of unfavorable condition. So again, in summary, a composite thing that is in effect does not arise from a permanent cause that is, or from a divine creator's will. Rather, it arises and perishes in dependence on the presence or absence of the many impermanent causes and conditions that have a concordant capacity to produce it. Whether in the beginning, middle, or end, it is never possible for the effect to exist both as a composite entity and as a permanent and unchanging one.
Oh yeah. Oh no, thank you as it was. And the tobacco yora. No, thank you a couple de la sigora. The rande thank you a couple de rande the money dance. Rande so number sanje to dama she or you know the drama don't do deba semzamba to zo sigara. Ne bacha to the she or to the shanda sombotelia. Ngwe mawa sigara ngwe ma ngwe tindub mawa. Ba to kires ramune to yore ese. De kelling yora. But in thank you a channel ramune to bale, you don't drive in Namsha Rungo mare. Which is a conzo tender ma regma, you don't drive into kelling to thank you a channel, temper tuba, Rawan to Trubalia, you de Rongimarwas, teach over Kuyora. Ona thank you a come the rande, the money dance. The money is a chiruji to your mouth, the money sira. Shebale, no tadebe. Kilogi Sutra to Rexala so what is your essay. Chita Mawatan, Dotibani derita. Somebody Yachiru to your marese. Ngobukanga semdi tangi somebody and get it. Yamani is to do Otilisicora. Somebody she do member Mawatera. Uma tell you a come there, round it, Yamani dance. Somebody Namja, Injo Mawa Maiban Jude. Net so attention to Ama Maimba to us, thank you and Shijana. Chitra Mawa dan Dodebe, Nishu Jinchidano, Tasu, and Ruki Kule, Yoyen Sigura, you rang when you truba USA. Debu rang when you truba yours, rang when you truba Kulet and rang when you truba Debu Kigres. You did Tauton San and Nia Yokores. Debu Tauton San and Nia Yokos to the Kelling to Aswara. Electunde Rongimarwas and Aswara. Dodebe Nishu Jinchidano, Tasu, and Ruki. Idigi lele kyon debe. Iwele temba tuba re rangune tubgure. Igwele Rangune Tubura Teletan and in the Sugi, Jute Yavata Duga Roa, the Tigris telling to us. Sometimes Bane Lage Pasha, the Kunshit into Shagre, Kunshil Leg in the Ba, the Digi Leg Pasha and the Teo again in Tebu. Eve Kuta to make you to Skankaki or Skelling Yora. Pasha Tausu in Rudo. Tausu was in a taxation, Sena Raya, but a Tausu was Sigora. Tausu was Chesa was Chevachenico, Dires, Ragres, or the Takonzo. Sometimes Bane Pasha get Pasha get Pasha get Tausu into the Sometimes Bane Lagi Pasha, Digi Lagi Pasha change. Also, in Rugi, Kushi number she was scaling it up. Kushi Semchi or some Tambush State and do Kawada make a Pasha Kangasha, Elitan and Drebu Kanga, Tigresiora. Uma tell you alone, Dene, Ranshingi Trube, Yangigi, Undela, Tinjungi Namsha, Miruara, some bases. Uma tell you alone, Ranshingi Truba, Ramini Truba, like you than Drebu Rungumara son doase. Then number Sanje to them our Shanda some digge. And Rangwini to be good and killing to us. Once you did, and Mao Shana Digma to us. Oh, Tishagora. At the Kundi, long the water trunk to a tapanium to the Shadura. To that she was there. Oh, the dance our Shirikos and Gobulu Dukis. Rashi Kula Kenane, Rashi Kuta Kelane. Rigba minor, Rangshin Trubayana, Ramone Trubayana, Tausa de Trubayana, you don't kill it any show at the Runguma Resigora. You don't kill it, show a Ranshi Chabachan, you don't kill it, that Joana, and Rangshin to what Rigmare. You don't get Chabachan, Rangshin to what the Runguma Resora. You think Jurgumares or Ranshi Chabachan, she said Chidaponero. Rangshin to the lake, you don't get Chabatagmare. Chidabona Roarju. Ranshin Tani Chumi than Shalato, Ranshin Trubaina, Rangune Trubaina, Rawatu Trubaina, Shalato in the El Kugumare. You can kill a Toko Marason to Asora. Ranshin Tani Chumi than Shalato Mavaye. Jason Besir Shenas or Tipo to Situna.
Mhm. So then there's like sort of a doubt or a qualm raised here. It says then, from the viewpoint of the Prasangika Madhyamaka system, the two Buddhist schools asserting external existence, and it's kind of clarified here in the English for us, but that being the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika school, and the Chittamatra school would not be proponents of dependent arising. For both the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika assert an external reality produced from virtuous and non-virtuous causes that are truly established and capable of bearing analysis. So sorry, that will continue, but here, when it comes to then this question that is being raised, well, according to, and there are four Buddhist tenet schools, we have those that are considered to be essentialists, and so of our four Buddhist tenet schools, those being the Vaibhashikas, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatra, and the Madhyamaka, the essentialists who propound some kind of external existence are those of the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika. But those who are essentialists in the sense of asserting some kind of existence from its own side or intrinsic existence also includes the Chittamatra school, because although they're not asserting some kind of external existence that has intrinsic or inherent existence, they would say that the mind it is truly existent. There is no external reality, but everything exists in the nature of mind, and that everything is therefore existent from its own side, as is explained here, that For the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika, they are asserting an external reality produced from virtuous and non-virtuous causes that are truly established and capable of bearing analysis. And so from their point of view, all of our happiness, all of our suffering and so forth is existent by kind of intrinsic nature, is existent from its own side. And those are truly established, like virtue and non-virtue are truly established and are something that is capable of bearing analysis, which here means that if you are to search for the thing designated within the basis of designation, search for what is that non-virtue, you're able to point to something, find something that has that kind of intrinsic existence. Or according to the Chittamatra school, again, they assert a truly established foundation consciousness in alaya vijnana, capable of withstanding analysis and serving as the basis for retaining karmic predispositions. So here, these essentialist schools assert some kind of intrinsic existence. And here, for them, that is the way in which you're able to have functionality and so forth. Whereas for the Prasangika Madhyamakas, composite things are not inherently or truly established, and therefore such a presentation of dependent arising of cause and effect would be untenable. So to have some kind of establishment from its own side, intrinsic or autonomous establishment, is contradictory, they would assert, to causality, to things being dependent upon their various causes and conditions. And so as the source for that, then he quotes from the fundamental verses on the middle way by Nagarjuna, which says, "It makes no sense to say that intrinsic nature is produced from causes and conditions. If produced from causes and conditions, intrinsic nature would be a product. How could it be appropriate for intrinsic nature to be a product? For intrinsic nature is not created, nor does it depend on another." So here, to again assert some kind of an intrinsic nature as well as causality is contradictory, and Nagarjuna points out to us, because something that is dependent upon causes and conditions is sort of antithetical to something being an intrinsic nature, which is uncreated and not contingent upon others.
Oh yeah. Oh, that is. I could say about question. No matter what, do Kellinger, round the tuba Kellinger, and it and Mawateg Marwas, or Matajolo, Cosut and Marwasana, at the Lanja Yora. A children de Mawa Namji, Nuju, in Judan, on the shares and Bendola Sombe, on the shares and Banashe, Dole, Soluja Bendola Sombanamse, Engine Deborah Joa, you are Mabala Soba Sumda, nga yuwa mebala soba tende tenji deba jo suma sheju nga sheju do wa o tende ti kelingi rese ye sonza tende ma sha go rese gara ye simben dole chwa yuwa mebe kela soba tende somda ne nga le chwa kelen shes yuwa mebala soba wa kelen she ma wa ye be wa ti kelen tende kelingi lab ke yore kelingi orese tende ma yin la tende ma de se go da this is tuna tende ma yin se ta
So here then we sort of laid out the qualm that then can such Buddhist essentialists be proponents of dependent arising? So as a reply to that, it says, in general, as explained above, these Buddhist essentialists themselves claim to uphold the principle of dependent arising and accept that the world and its inhabitants arise from the 3 or 5 conditions, such as the lack of a divine creator's will. So here in general, although the Prasangika Manyamakas might take issue with this, the Buddhist essentialists asserting that they do accept dependent arising. They claim to accept dependent arising. They say that they are proponents of dependent arising. They accept these ideas that the world and its inhabitants arise from these 3 or 5 conditions, such as lacking a divine creator's will and so forth. There being sort of multiple impermanent causes. And so they would say that they are proponents of dependent arising and accept the kind of propositions asserted by the Buddha.
Oh yeah, that the day in a chitunga bag the rest of Shasura. And the Tavayora, Angel Tube, Agent Reverjo, some Becone, Najetum Dendel and Mix it up to your not and the Tuba said. Oh, Tina, Kanto Sonia Chibanam, Tanzichua Tangiba. In your Kala Truba, you trauma Luchubeco. Yes, some Batarse. Oh, well, more than the Tangent Reverjoa, Imba, Tangent Reverjoa. Yena Chachi, Runga, Tindrup, Jengobo, Yengo Barsamness. Gobo Mawasoge, Tindrup Yende, Tangent Reverjoa in Bichel Sigara. You can let any Choa Yenako, Rangune Trubeco, Yengo Grace, Kusenko Yoresera. Mawa Namjet Tangent Reverjoa. Yena Chachi, Runga, Tindrup, Jengobo, Yenko Vese. Yengo Barsamne. Tende Ngobo Nam. Tindru yinbe kyusendo sone takwe tatung shesa. Ongobo nam tindru rese, tindru yinde kudan kyan la teni chi debar shunga yinbe shese. Kujin la teni chi debar shunga ti temba truba yinba rangune truba yuebe kusen la tangi orese ora. Kusen la songi orese, samgi orese ora. Kusendo sonde takwe tatung shesa, takta la longa re. Kare se ngobo kanga te teni chi debar shunga re te sonza rangune truba rese ora. Uma tenjo asene rangune truba zina takta londora. Meba zina cheta londora. Oh, tinte. Unzo takta longa res ora takbe thare. Takbe thare ne kare. Takbe thare zimbe. Shunga tembar chela so tangzin de tente yimba de samlu tane rangune truba res sambe samlu de temru tangi ore so konzo. Ra. Keba uma bandam jene Tenji Debar Junga Yimbe Kusen Tini, Wobona Rangune Maybe Kusen Yakshushil Pass of Giora. Uma Agirwa. Eba Umaba Namjines, Uma Tenju Atabone. Tenji Debar Junga Yimbe Kusen Yiki, Wobona Rangune, Teme Yinkulas, Rangune Trube, Maybe Teme Yinku, the Stitu Giores. Dana Yangobo. Tembara meba da rangshinge meba la chache rongwa yang jo ne ba imbe oma tenjo age rangune mena ya teje deban jo samle chawa da cheba ten jo thugure se ora tene tak ba samle chache sha thugure se a shenda ngo ma to zo ge ora che ne ni ye che mena ne le pa tak ba samye na chawa ronggu ma re se chawa chenge de rangune ko re se ora o timbe eba oma ba namje keba umaba namlane tenju tenye wa tenju tenye tenje je tsawa chenge number tobe kawadam chebe korju ba so so da khar sungor sana ma to zo ke tenje deban jwa yime kyusenge rangune tru temba tru cheje ko takta longyo arese uma tenju ata bude tenje deban jwa yime kyusenge rangune me rangshinge me to damba ma tru cheje nelu thadu trube Chelo Kugiora. Oh, Tesonzako. And you are Janet and Reddy. You send to General, number Tobe, Raw Maluba Chube Corjuse. Namdo Nyomobata Shije Tribala Soba, Mare, Ole and Rotogiore, Sigora. Mama to do Tati Hako to Guiamato, and then bet you send you around with the Trubakel, Atala Londo Des. Uma tenjo attend Mares. That and the culture was Namawake, Tente Sagachi or the Tente, Akala Lone and Rangune Trube to sell it to yours. And you are sending Rangune maybe to sell it to yours. Oh, this would yeah, this.
So here, then regarding these assertions, however, Tsongkhapa states in his praise of dependent arising, and here again, Jelama Tsongkhapa is praising the Buddha, giving this special kind of praise because due to his teaching of dependent arising. And so the verse here says, the immature who hold on to this strengthen the bonds of extremism. For the wise, this very thing is the way to cut the net of elaborations. So for the essentialists, the dependently arisen nature of composite things entails that they are truly established in order to be able to perform functions. So thus they uphold dependent arising as the reason composite things are truly established. So here for an essentialist, then they are putting forth the fact that things are causally or are composite, or sorry, are dependently arisen as the reason establishing that they are truly established. So for them, this kind of misunderstanding causes them to fall into an extreme of permanence. So again, for the Prasangika Madhyamakas, if you are grasping at things as having that kind of true establishment, you're sort of exaggerating or adding on to something. And for them, it's actually the sort of opposite. So according to Tsongkhapa, in so arguing, they strengthen the bonds of the extreme of permanence, those who would assert that dependent arising is the reason that things are truly established. And so therefore, they're just getting more and more strongly attached to this extreme of permanence. In contrast, the wise Madhyamikas argue that because of being dependently arisen, composite things must not be truly existent and must not exist from their own side. So they contend that although composite things do not truly or inherently exist, they are nevertheless able to perform all functions. So therefore, Tsongkhapa states that for the Madhyamikas, the dependent arising becomes the way to cut the entire net of conceptuality rooted in the apprehension of true existence. So here, then again, it is the case that those who are essentialists, although they are relying upon this idea of dependent origination, they're using it in the way that actually causes them to hold, to sort of strengthen their views of extremes, to become more entrenched in this idea of permanence. And this is because they are using, again, this idea that things, because they are dependently originated, therefore they are then truly established. And so they're not again getting at the actual true nature of things, but rather they're sort of stuck in this misunderstanding. And so for those Prasangika Madhyamakas, but for Madhyamakas in particular, this kind of dependent arising actually negates their being established from their own side or being truly established. So there's a sort of opposite kind of understanding here for those that are essentialists, that are using this reason of dependent arising in order to assert that things have some sort of true existence. It's actually working to strengthen their kinds of wrong grasping at this extreme of permanence.
Oh yeah. Atena randing me ma nam ne sigara. Tenjin de baran jo ma we. Tenjin de baran jo ma we. Tanje be lamla tension de as. Me ma wan do de ba na Sutra ma wa ro sim sam ba te zo sigara. Te zo sanje chum den de ge jin ju re se. Sanje chum den de shung lia tension de nang ba yin chi nang be shung de zo le tension de a. Ada ko ngobu tendu kelen ba yin tendu sun yi tendu yin be kyun ze ji temba tru ba yin si kelen ga de mandi ba de sun go ra. Oh tena ngo ma nam ne tenjin de ban jo ma ge sanje be lam la tension do na ba sanje be tru da le shu shin do wa shu shin do ya ngobu na tendu ji ngo ni me be kuma tenju ata bo ngobu tendu ji ngo yo ma re rangwe ne tru ba yo ma re si de konzo tsoba tsu go ra. Ketinggo nam rashile meba chesu tashina teta ina ngobu ne kyujin meba kyo kena chene kyudan kien kanga meba chagres. Rangu mena meres, tokbe takwa sambi yobe kochu marese. O tende cheje oma tenjua, chu tamze rangshingi madruba, tende rangu ne madruba mawa tele soba tsugore. Rangu ne madruna madriba rese. Ina kora nangba sanje be tupdale tengi warde. Tanda ngo tende imbe chusenji ngo bu rangu ne yoku, rangu ne mena meba rese. Soba tsugore se, oti madriba rese wara. Ngoni meba mawa namla tsueche, ngobo nam rangi ngoyo trube, tindrub deche lomba de, ngobo sama tindrub yin, rwa, ndeko nga jeche ne lomgwe warese. Ten lomba de neba yinbe ese, o tindrale neba yinbe, trubdale neba yinbe. Denamne, che ngozare, che shin mebe, nesu, nesu sungbe, umaba tana, o tati mandriba rese, mera tangu esi rese, yamchambu rese, sanje chumdende trubdal tingi ware, sanje chumdende ke tenji drebar jiwa yinbe chusengi, tongba nyigi nelu ti kutregi ware, ura tenji drebar jiwa yinbe chusengi rangu ne yosi lapki ware, o ti mandri re, ti mewe ne rese, o charshi rese, yamchen rese, tati mandriba rese, mebe neso, sungbe ese, Uma batar nasu, uma tenjua tana rande ngwe mawa teda kya, hawe tenjin rebar jungwa chishin mawa, mayin se ko bandra se go ra, chita tenjin mawa yin, ina hawe tenjin rangwine, tenjin rebar jungwa yinbe rangwine tongba jo shingenge, o tenjin di sha tugu yo ma te sonza, tenjin mawa yina ya, hawe tenjin mawa mayin se, lab kugu yo bandra se go ra, yinde che songa be, rangi le she nyimbu le se. Longtang ngobu nam takbar debe chiriba namse ngobu takbar debe chiriba tezulia tangye gelame khelenge omar Quran su trubdare tenji debar jwa yena rwa temba truba yengure rangwene truba yengure se o tene ngobu kanga temba truba da rangwene truba khele bate Quran su tembe ongba da trubdare be ti khele bali yamsa ke yo marese nangba sanje ba yin shendo tode bada drama wata semjamba tezo tanje ke lamla tension do tade angwa bu tindu yese khele ade mebe ne re songora rangi tembe lu yimbe charwe ne mila ase yela tene keshe yoye tende khela ne temba truba deba ne che shege ke ne so son so o konzo kyujela tene tembe tende khele anda rangu ne truba yese khele bate yamo shoya ke ne re se Ribazo Koranzo Lode Tilamna ke Yamsaya ke Yomarese. As a number Sanje but Betchinju in a Tandat and Delamna, maybe Nares and Udahia. I demand Russia.
So, thus, while Buddhist essentialists rely on the Buddhist path that propounds dependent arising, they in turn critique the Madhyamikas, who assert that composite things lack a truly established essence. And they stand firm in their proud assertion that composite things are truly established and exist by way of their own essence. So, here, for those that are proponents that are proponents of that are essentialists, that would say that things, in order for composite phenomena to function, they need to be truly existent. They critique the Madhyamikas by saying that, well, if the composite things lack this kind of truly established essence, then they would be totally non-existent. If something is merely dependently designated, for them that it does not suffice for existence. But in turn, the Madhyamikas, for this reason, according to the Madhyamikas, then, so the Madhyamikas are critiquing these essentialists by saying that you cannot simultaneously assert some kind of true existence as well as causality, as this dependent arising. Those are contradictory. But for the essentialists, in turn, say, well, your assertion that mere designated existence, something being merely designated, dependently designated, that does not suffice for existence. So, but in turn, for this reason, these essentialists are sort of proud and firm in their proud assertion that composite things are truly established and exist by way of their own essence. So they are proponents of dependent arising in that sense. But for this reason, according to Madhyamikas, Buddhist essentialists do not precisely understand or competently propound subtle dependent arising. So one could say that they understand generally and they consider themselves to be proponents of dependent arising, but they don't fully understand or propound what we would term subtle dependent arising. So Tsongkhapa says in his Essence of Eloquence of Good Explanations, distinguishing the provisional from the definitive, it is not at all surprising that non-Buddhists who assert that composite things are permanent do not accept dependent arising and therefore assert that phenomena are truly established. This is their teacher's position. So it's not so incredible that non-Buddhists assert that things are permanent or that they have these kinds of assertions that counteract or are contradictory to the Buddhist assertions. However, it is absurd to accept, on the one hand, dependent arising, wherein things arise and are produced in dependence on causes and conditions, and on the other hand, to uphold that phenomena are truly established. So here it's really like absurd, or it's kind of a laughable position to say that things are produced upon independence on causes and conditions and simultaneously have some kind of true establishment. So here again, for those who are non-Buddhists, that their teachers assert some kind of permanence, it's not okay, they can assert that, that's what their teachers believe. But for Buddhists, like these essentialists, to say that they do propound dependent arising, but yet are trying to hold to some kind of true establishment, this, Tsongkhapa points out, is kind of an absurd position, or is a laughable position.
Oh yeah, oh that this is also. Oh that are in the Karsoda. Sharavasti, Ra, Sutra, the Karsora. Sutra Gene, Kerbushada, Kishitini, Ramdulada, Shaya, Kinduba number Tama, Ridi Sanche, Abushibit, Narashe, Kukabra, Eva Sambuchon song. Chida Kona to Tama pay Abuchingere. Again, the shades are very share and godly share of share. Mambushe, there's a toss. Gorgidua. Kona to Kanga, Namjuni, Lobso, Yavuna, Kanga pay Abuchingere. Cambushanda to wear raw. And Oshanda to wear. Aina Kodian, Sange, Shanda, Savatan, Bambu Jiresam. There's no number sugar coagrex to the Desigdo, some the Hakuet and the Angry something god and Zoom of Judas, Chushan going to shake the Amba. Tiga Mambu Gorge, Shidama Droma so. Aina Chimaya, Sobotanda Rechuna, Mati Cheche. Want to Chusha the Shidamogoshan, my Shajan Dashana, Yopatadu, some gear. Or did the rain like Soda. Saluchan Bendorova, Saluchan Bendorandi, and the lawyer Chuma so the tea, and that which my tree shaved to us, like ever some. Saluchan Bendo Chema, thousand Maya, which is Archie de Shesho or something. It's someone to share. I was saying, Angarala share Kugato, and a Mabusaso. That's how much Chesu Raya. Also,
So here, our time is up for today, and right now this is the last class for right now. So I would just like to say thank you to everyone there listening at Shravasti, all of the nuns and the Sangha, Kin Rinpoche, Geshe Damdul, and so forth. This has been a very fortunate opportunity to be able to give teachings on this Rice Seedling Sutra and have all of you listen and so forth. And so during these teachings, I gave a little bit of a longer kind of introduction for you who are there at the nunnery at Shravasti. Maybe you already are very familiar with all of this material, but I took the time for those who are listening who might be newer to Buddhism to give kind of longer introductions. And so it's kind of taken me a while to get through this. But so I would just like to say that we didn't get to, although we did not get to get through much of the text, I hope that if I have the capacity in the future, we can continue to give teachings on this rice seedling sutra, maybe with a little bit less at the beginning, and we would be able to get through it a little bit faster. But I would just like to reflect upon what a wonderful, auspicious kind of opportunity to be able to, even though we didn't get through much of the rice seedling sutra itself, to be able to have these kinds of teachings. I myself, it's a very fortunate opportunity to be able to explain these teachings, and for you all to listen, and to listen so attentively. And so I would just like to say thank you to all of you, and hopefully in the future, if we have all the conditions, we will continue these teachings on the rice seedling sutra.
도대체 된 데서야.
So thank you to everybody.
Genras Rinpoche, on behalf of everybody at the Abbey, everybody online, thank you so much for these teachings. It's wonderful that you did long motivations at the beginning. I think it's always good for us to hear the teachings repeatedly. And please, please continue to teach this text. It's so valuable. It's really helping us in understanding emptiness and dependent arising and how they fit together. So please continue with this. And also know that we'll be attending the teachings that you're giving to Jewel Hart on the Vajra Cutter Sutra. So we'll be attending those, even though you won't see us on the screen. We're there. So please live long, continue to teach us and guide us. And yeah, may we be worthy students to receive these kinds of teachings.
아니, tuksenang shuya yores. 아니, 저기 ngunro drawo di, ngansola yang pendo champo chungsa, 저기 ngunro des. 아니, gyopo tsargo mare, hine mutune, kuchi di mutune, sutra nangrona. 다 코카 중난 대 미시베 카와상보레스 아니 다 콘소 라양 다 키랑기 숭제 도제제베 도기 콜라 생기레스 아니 딜라 투체나 아니 마움파 양잘디 무투네 지에 ngansogal 레와유스 아니 야 델라스 이링고 슈라나스
And Katrina, we really want to thank you too. Without you, none of this could happen. You really make the connection. So, you learned Tibetan. It took a long time, much effort to do, but it's really paying off in terms of the benefit that it gives to so many other people. So thank you.
This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends.
Tuchen maumba the yankel jaya gi rewa yus. So thank you all. I see all of you Dharma friends as very important. So please remember that.
Record